I'll be on top again. I'm not gonna let you take me down. It's gonna be the whole 9 yards or nothing.
Hi, I'm Tom Mealy. Welcome to Legal Straight Talk, another edition here on Cable 20.
And I'm Brett Harrison. Welcome.
You know, I want to thank Al Hedayati for being on last week, talking to us about the areas of matrimonial law. There's just so much that's involved with matrimonial. There's so many different factors that are involved with it. So we're going to have Al back here at a later date. But today's show, we're going to bounce back now to personal injury law, since that's the area of law that is more of a specialty to us. We're gonna bounce back a little bit more to personal injury. We're gonna talk about settlements. Brett, people get hurt in automobile accidents. They have a total misconception of what the value, and I say that they look at it as a dollar value, and people cannot look at this as a lottery ticket. Too many people look at it as a lottery ticket.
Because, they hear about, well, what about the McDonald's case? The woman dropped her coffee and she got X dollars.
Yeah.
What about me? Or they say, my friend had a similar case and they got X dollars.
Yeah. I mean, the reality of what we have going on here, especially in the venue or the county that we live in, is that each venue is different. So let's explain to the audience the difference between Suffolk, Nassau, Bronx, Brooklyn, and what those venues are called and why those venues are so important to your case. So let's start with Suffolk.
Venue just means which county the case is brought in. Which courthouse, whether it's Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Nassau, Manhattan, Staten Island.
What's the difference? You get into an accident in Suffolk. Why is the Suffolk case venue so different than the Bronx venue?
Well, they just have a reputation. The Bronx has a reputation as the Wild West. Simply meaning, for example, I'm going to use a slip and fall at a premises.
Okay.
Most people in Nassau and Suffolk typically own houses, so they tend to be a little bit more conservative, rightly or wrongly, or more protective, thinking, you got to think of who is the jury panel, who's going to be on your jury. A lot of them are homeowners, so they feel for that. Whereas a lot of people in the boroughs, 5 boroughs, they tend to live in a building, an apartment building where they rent, for example. So when it's a premises case, there's automatically a bias that the landlord's lying, he's a slumlord, or something else like that. Where in Nassau, many of them aren't renters, as I've said, they own the house.
So you're saying to me that the difference between Suffolk County or Nassau County and the Bronx is because of the way of life of the individual who lives in that county?
That's one thing. Another thing is...
let's face it, they own, there's not many suburban homes in the Bronx. So you're saying to me that because they
live horizontally, much more people, as opposed to vertical, obviously.
Well, I'll go that way. But, in my particular house, I have the up and the wide. But the point is that you're saying that because individuals in the Bronx do not technically live the American dream by owning their own home, that is going to affect the value of what your injury is truly worth?
I think it's potential value. Meaning, I think it's when we have a case and we're dealing with an adjuster or an attorney, one of the factors you have to look at is what county is it in? Is it in the Bronx? Is it in Long Island, Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester? The jurors tend to, and your jury pool tends to be more conservative just in Long Island. Look at the difference in Long Island.
But again, you're going back into the conservative issue again.
Look at the difference in Long Island to Manhattan and the 5 boroughs. It tends to be more Republican in Nassau and Suffolk, correct? Look at Nassau. Okay. Nassau is almost more Republican, tends to be.
I'll agree.
Where, the 5 boroughs tends to be far more Democratic.
I agree with that.
Okay. Now, the only way I can really explain it is the boroughs have a different reputation. Just think about it. when you were going to borrow money when you were 15 years old and you were going to ask for $20, you had a preference of, for me, I would ask my father last, I would ask my mother first, and my brother and sister in that order. Why? Not that they each have a different reputation. It doesn't mean it always holds sway, but it's a factor that we can use. You're always looking for the upper hand.
There's a
life
big
poker.
difference between borrowing money from your mother or father and then me breaking my leg in an auto accident. Let's assume that I'm breaking. I get what you're saying, but that's wrong.
But let me just show you another thing. And which generally shows you is a lot of times when we're looking at a settlement value in a case, as you know, we always look at we tend to look at jury verdicts. Jury verdict is the amount that a jury awarded in a case. So we'll say, well, are we in Nassau, Suffolk, which department? Are we in the 5 boroughs? And we'll look at the different jury verdicts. And it just generally tends to be that Nassau and Suffolk, let's say, are going to be a lot less, typically less, significantly less, than Brooklyn and the Bronx.
Okay, folks, let me explain what we're doing here, just so you get an understanding of the nature of this show. The way that we design this show is I am acting as the layperson out there who knows nothing about the law and how aggravated I am at the way that the situation is. So my response to Brett, or my argument with Brett, is going to be based on what I think the common individual out there actually is feeling. And so understand, even though I do know, the difference between it, if it sounds like I'm arguing or discussing with Brett on a different level from where I am as far as my knowledge of the law, I'm not. I'm trying to put myself into your shoes and change character for a minute so that I become you. Because these are the questions that you have, and if I argue with him over the reasoning behind something and make it appear to be either unconstitutional or not right or just flat out wrong
or incredulous,
he's gonna explain to us
from a legal standpoint
why this has to be the way it is. So getting back into the nature of the show and how it's set up, I'm going to attack Brett again, and I'm going to say to him, if I break my leg in an auto accident in Suffolk County, and that policy is $500,000, hypothetically, and I have the identical accident and I'm in the Bronx, that because the jury, if it goes to trial, is a Bronx jury, the probability, very strong probability, is that I am going to get awarded more in compensation, dollar value, than I would be in Suffolk, yes or no?
As a general answer, I would say yes. And I would base that on, if you look at the jury verdict reporter, or jury verdicts.
But these people don't know what a jury verdict reporter is.
A jury verdict reporter is after a jury makes an award in a case that went to a full trial,
right,
you will see how much was awarded. And when I'm looking at a case, whether we should go further, one of the factors, it's not the only factor, Tom, one of the factors would be, what does the verdict reporter say? Jury verdicts have to say. And there's many other factors that go into a case, and I know we touched a little bit on it about liability in a case.
Let me explain that in any law firm, a good law firm knows how to play this game with the carrier. And a good law firm will not take the answer that you're Suffolk or Nassau versus Bronx or Brooklyn, and they won't take that to heart. There's ways around that, and any good law firm knows how to do that. But what people have to understand is that everybody has a different reaction to an accident and an injury sustained, correct?
That's
correct.
True.
Okay. So you're involved in a motor vehicle accident. Let's go from the fracture now to the soft tissue injury. Just because you're in pain doesn't mean that you sustained a serious injury. Pain is subjective. Am I right or wrong?
Exactly. And that's why they have objective tests, whether it be MRI,
right, because you have to
tests,
prove the case.
As we've had one of the Dr. Dow on, and he talked about the different objective tests.
Right.
But there's other factors in what we value. It's not just purely the injury, whether it's a broken leg or not. It's also, let's say, did they miss work? Did they miss 90 days? Did they miss 30 days? Were they out of work for 6 months?
Well, that's called threshold.
But
That's a threshold requirement under the law.
As a factor of settlement, when we're valuing a case, we say, well, let's look at some objective things. Did the person miss any work? Did they miss no work? Did they miss 30 days, 9 months, a
Why
year,
is that
6
important?
months? Because if you can show that due to the accident, and their injury is causally related to the accident, meaning prior to the accident their leg wasn't broken.
No, let's forget fractures. Let's go with a soft tissue.
But, okay,
a lot of
if you
people
can
don't understand that.
If you can show that their injury is causally related to the accident, and as a result and a consequence of that accident and the injury, and the doctor, you have a medical report that says, this person is not fit to continue work. They need to take off, whether it's a week,
Daily
a
activities.
month. Yeah, their activities of daily living. One of their activities of daily living is work. So now, and another factor of work could be, yes, they went back to work, but maybe they went back on light duty. Simply meaning, let's say they used to do heavy lifting or what have you, and now the only thing they could do is work behind the desk due to, and you show it's causally related to the accident.
That's all right. So that breaches the requirement to
It could.
now
It's one-
move
there's
forward.
many factors.
One of the breaches. So the problem with compensation in a lawsuit is people have a misconception of what the true dollar value is worth. I always tell people here in America, they compensate you for your injury based in the form of a dollar value. If we were in Russia or China, they're going to give you a cow or a turkey.
Wow.
Here they give you dollars.
There's no other way for them to compensate you.
Don't misconstrue that this is a lottery ticket, because it is far from a lottery ticket. You are entitled to a fair value for the injury that you sustained. People come into an office, whether it's any law office in New York, and we're going to assume it's New York at this point, and they have an injury. Right away, too many people think, Brett, that injury is worth $1 million.
Well, the first thing they say is, okay, this is what happened. How much is my case worth? And the answer is, I don't know. How can you know? You don't know if it's a permanent injury. We don't even know the full level of injury. It takes months to know if the person's healed, if they're not healed, if there's permanent consequential damages for the rest of their life, or they have limited use. Let's say they lost 20% strength in their hand, or the dexterity in their foot, or whatever it may be.
So I'm going to give the viewers a brief scenario of an accident. I'm going to tell you what the injuries are. I'm going to tell you what the ramifications of the injuries caused you as far as work related, and then Brett and I are going to tell you that in Suffolk County, generally, the value of that injury, and I think you're going to be surprised. Let's take, Brett, a accident where there's $5,000 worth of property damage.
Okay.
The vehicle was struck in the rear. We're not going to get into liability, this, that, and everything. You're 100% of liability. So you're at a complete stop.
Before you go
Hold on, I want to give this scenario.
No, but I want to explain to something. You mentioned liability. Part of liability is you don't get to the how much is my case is worth until you know what percent
Whether
liable.
you're 100% or not.
You could be 20% liable, and let's say the verdict comes in for $100,000, you're only going to get 80%.
Right, but that's liability. I want to forget that for a minute.
Okay.
There's no liability. You're hit in the rear. You've done nothing wrong. You stopped at a stop sign. Zero liability on your part. So now you come in and you take an ambulance to a hospital, and they do x-rays, and you've got neck pain, and you maybe got a little bit of sensation going on in the tip of your fingers. So the next day, you decide, well, you know what, I'm going to try to shake it off. You go to work. Now, in this particular scenario, the person at the end of the day winds up with a single herniated disc protruding slightly into the thecal sac, which is the part of the neck. It's common whiplash. I want you to answer the question to the scenario. Simple herniation, but you lose no time away from work. You decide to go to a doctor because you're feeling this pain in your neck, not your primary care physician. We'll get into trauma doctors and what they do. In typical multidiscipline facilities, you treat with that person for 90 days, let's say 3 months. At the end of that 3 months, you're feeling okay. But the diagnosis was simply a herniated disc protruding, impingement into the thecal sac, touching the nerve root. No lost time away from work. Hypothetically, let's say $6,000 was paid out of medical bills, $5,000 on your car. In Suffolk County, what do you think that the average case would be worth? Shock them.
The shock of this is that that's not necessarily a case I would put in the courts, because you might not meet threshold. This case may get dismissed because you haven't shown any type of serious or threshold level of injury. My feeling is if you were able to get, it's going to range basically, I would say, from 0 to maybe 15, and I would say 15 on the high
15,000.
On the high end, I would say if you get anywhere 15,000 and under, you may even get 7,500.
Now let's stop for a second. Let's assume, Brett.
Now
they
this is
come in-
only,
no, wait a minute,
I'm only
because I
going
got another
based.
part of this.
But hold on, I'm only going based
on that scenario.
without any prior injuries.
Right,
I'm talking
right.
about
No prior injuries.
as is.
Now, let's all of a sudden say that they offer you, I'm going to back up and they say they offer you $15,000. Now, you decide at this point you do not want to take that $15,000. You got a major problem, because the factors that now come into play, if you put that case into litigation, you now are looking at least 2 years down the road before it gets on the trial calendar.
That's true.
On top of that, you're going to pay 2 experts to come in and testify, which is going to cost you roughly $800 to $8,500 a piece or more. So let's take it on the low end. We got $16,000. So that means 16 plus 15. Right now, you've got to win $31,000 at trial just to be where you are at that moment.
Yeah, but now let's take this. Let's go back to where we started, though, Tom. This is a perfect segue into it. We talked about the jury, okay? Let's say we get fortunate enough to get to a jury on this. The case doesn't get dismissed prior to even getting to a jury, which is a whole nother show. But now a jury's going to say, jury's going to say, well, let's look at it. The person is claiming they're so injured, they didn't miss work. Let's say you said they treated for 90 days and stopped treating. The doctor doesn't say there's any sense of permanency. Okay, so to a juror,
You're fine.
you're fine, and you're trying to milk the system.
For money.
For money.
So this
Where's
is the
the injury?
whole point. So, we do things, and I don't want to sound like we do things a little bit different, and any good law firm would know how to get around that. Because at the end of the day, your pain that you're feeling, the level of pain from that nerve root that's being impinged by that disc herniation that you're feeling, again, is subjective. Everybody is different. I live with a C6, a collapsed C6 vertebrae, and I'm fine. You may live with a collapsed C6 vertebrae pushing on the nerve root, and you may not be fine. Everybody has a different element of pain. But at the end of the day,
But
if you're looking for a lottery ticket on a herniation that sounds like a major thing, it's not there. So you have to look at the scenarios that follow
But part of
the
being
ramifications.
part of being an attorney is really getting to know the client and understanding their lifestyle, because there may be significant lifestyle changes. But if you don't talk to your client on a regular basis and try to pair it up, the lifestyle and review the medical records, there may be something in there. For example, maybe they used to be a championship. They were really good at riding horses or shooting a gun where it was a significant part of their life, or swimming or exercise. And you can show that part of their lifestyle, their regular activities of daily living and sports and so forth, their life has significantly changed.
Well, that's the difference between a good attorney who is very well diversified in personal injury
And staff,
an attorney
and staff.
and an attorney who is not, and that's the difference between the two of them.
I mean, that's just a broad base. This same herniation, based on a few different factors, could be worth hundreds of thousands. Could be worth 50.
If
could
there
be
is
worth
a
100.
tremendous, correct. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to tell them the story, and you'll know what I'm talking about. We a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, and this one just came to my mind. There was this woman that was involved in an accident. She had a hairline fracture in her ankle. There was no surgery. It was a closed reduction. It was a hairline non-displaced fracture in her ankle. At the end of the day, her ankle was fine, and every once in a while, in the cold weather, ankle may start to flare up, but eventually it's going to go away. That case in Suffolk County normally on a real good day. Now you got to remember that the injury really wasn't a severe injury, even though there was a fracture, but it was
But there
a
was no
hairline fracture.
permanency.
At the end of the day, that person, I don't know if you remember this, got, they offered the jury verdict reports that we did came in around $55,000, which is a lot of dough. You got to remember, it's tax-free money. So they were offering you $50,000 to $55,000 for a hairline fracture that was in your ankle. We were able to settle that case at $95,000.
But why? Because we talked about significantly that she could not wear heels
But
anymore.
what happened? She didn't take it.
Right.
She didn't take the money. She decided that $95,000 was not enough for her. We sat down and explained to her that at trial, we have to bring in an orthopedic surgeon. We had to bring in a neurologist because there may have been some nerve issues. And it cost us, I think if I remember, Brett, it was close to 20 grand for the experts. They were very expensive for these particular experts. So at $95,000, it means we would have had to settle that case for in excess of $120,000, $115,000 in a Suffolk venue where the jury verdict reports didn't even come close to it. Well, let me tell you what happened. They offered us $95,000. That person turned it down. The jury came back at $30,000. Not only did she have to spend the $20,000 on the expert, but at the end of the day, she had to now take home $10,000, which, by the way, she only took home 2/3 of that. So you got to be very careful. When a good law firm is able to get good money, don't look, there's an old expression, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. That was a very, very well done case, and the person got greedy. Don't be greedy.
But one of the reasons we had gotten it up from 50 to 95 is it was more than just the injury, because it did affect her daily living. Because she wasn't able to wear heels.
But under normal circumstances,
right.
the verdict reports came in between $50,000 and $60,000 under her conditions.
Right.
And a good, again, going back to a good law firm, any good personal injury law firm knows how to do this. So, the fact that it went up as high as it did, Brett, was great. And you pat yourself on the back for that. But at the end of the day, it's up to the client on whether the client wants to take it, and we can only advise at that point.
They're the general. We're there just to give them the option.
Exactly.
And part of giving options is understanding your client, their lifestyle, and also, quite honestly, whether they would be good at testifying. How are they going to appear to a jury?
A lot goes into this. Listen, we're out of time again. This is another great show. Understand that when you get involved in a motor vehicle accident, the best advice that anybody can give is do your research on whatever law firm you decide to choose out there. Make sure that their area of expertise is in that area of law that you need it, whether it be matrimonial, personal injury, real estate, wills and estate, whatever it may be. Do your research. Check out the law firm. And I always say that if they don't have a website, they're not doing you justice.
Also, you can interview. You're more than welcome to interview many different lawyers. You don't have to go with the first one.
Right. Until next week, have a wonderful, wonderful week. Be safe out there. Again, special thanks to Cablevision Channel 20. We'll be back next week on Legal Straight Talk.
Take care.
So what you're telling me is that if that child, let's just back up for a second, is not utilizing that woman for any kind of nutrition, you know what I'm talking about,
yeah.
You're telling me that child, it's an equal chance between that child going to the father and going to the mother. The child is, let's say, 6 months old.
Every case has so many different factors. Let's just say this. I've had plenty of cases where the father has more parenting time. Focus on parenting time, because one parent is going to be deemed custodial and the other non-custodial.
What does that mean?
Custodial means the parent having residential custody, which is really split into two different things: residential custody and legal custody. Legal custody is decision-making over, the affairs of the child, education, health care, and general welfare of the child. That's what legal is. And residential is who's the parent's going to live with. You go to the doctor, who's the parent? What address are you going to put for the child? When the child goes to school, what address do they use for the school? So then that becomes another issue for child support, because the custodial parent doesn't pay child support. The non-custodial parent will have to pay child support to the custodial parent. So everything is related in a way, But the only way I can answer your question, because every case is different, is we've had plenty of cases where the father gets custody for whatever the reason, because every case is different.
But also you find out a lot of the one parent who doesn't really want the custody will use the child as a pawn to get something else. And that happens more often than not.
Well, that's exactly right. That happens in usually the divorce cases.
You know, we got a few minutes left. It definitely sounds to me that you got this under control. You know, by talking to you, it sounds like a lot of what you do is you try to mediate, you try to understand, and you try to make this as simple as possible for all parties concerned. I mean, Brett, we can go on forever. You know,
Of course, there's a lot of
unfortunately, we only
scenarios.
have, you know, a half hour. But, you know, I'd like to do this again and bring up issues of
Maybe break it down a little
children.
bit. Yeah.
Because one of the things that aggravates me, and I've seen this all the time when two parties get divorced, is the kids. The kids become pawns, almost like on a chess game. And, you know, you have kids, I have kids, you have children. If one of your children, Brett, went outside and was walking in the backyard and slipped and skinned her nose, you're going to bring her inside and say, okay, shake it off, let me put a little pad on it, and you're going to forget about it. But if you're in the midst of a divorce and that child happens to be at your house and the same thing happens, all of a sudden it becomes a total catastrophe, and the next thing you know, the lawyers are being called and the father's an abusive parent and it's this, or the mother,
Right.
vice
Nobody's
versa.
watching him. The kid
Yeah,
does what he wants.
Exactly. You know, you have to understand, you got to go in this thing with one general idea, that both parents love their kids, right?
That's
Nobody
a smart
wants to
idea.
hurt their kids. And that's what I tell clients all the time. If accidents happen, they happen. And, you know, unless it's, again, you know, some type of, you know, total negligence on the part, gross negligence on the part of a parent, then, you know, we don't like to go in there with that approach, because judges frown upon it, you know, as much as clients want it. And at the end of the day, parents have to make sure you realize one thing. Your children are going to grow up, and they're going to know what happened at one time or another, and you're going to affect that child's future, entire future. So we always give the advice is, be careful what you do, be careful at the approach you take, because at the end of the day, you're not affecting the other side. That's temporary.
You're affecting the
You're
child.
affecting the child permanently.
Brett, any final words you want to say before we close?
Well, the only final word I would have to say is that I think a lot of times people make these allegations, and when one of the clients or the other side is actually signing a document or an affidavit, that can be used against them. That's a court document. That's a serious document when you make these allegations, Al, isn't
Well,
it?
you know, that's basically someone committing perjury, you know, and I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen, but that's why our firm, I can only speak for my firm, and the people that work for me, we are very reluctant to take a dirty approach to this, because it's people's lives. We are not going to make unfounded claims against another parent. We're not going to make, unless we have proof, hard evidence. We always tell our clients,
Hard evidence.
hard evidence,
And that's
because
important, but
it's, you know,
We're running out of time here. You know, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Legal Straight Talk tonight. Mr. Al Hedayati, this is to do with matrimony. We'll be back next week with our next topic. So tune in next week to Legal Straight Talk. Until then, have a wonderful week. Be safe. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, and thank Cablevision Channel 20.
have a good one, everyone.